What's going on, everybody? Aidan from Birds vs. Boys here. And at the time of this recording, we are 1 week away from the start of Eagles training camp. Yes, this time next week, we will be talking about actual, tangible, physical football. I can't wait for it. So before we get into our topics tonight, a reminder as football ramps up, this podcast will ramp up as well. We've already secured some guest spots, including next week on the day of the start of Eagles training camp. We will have guests in studio and we will all year long. But again, just wanted to preface this. We got some things to talk about tonight, some deep dives tonight on a certain topic I want to get into that's been circulating on the internet. But next week is the week. That's when we get to talk about football. That's when we get to talk about on-field tangible product and success. How does this team look against each other? And soon, how does this team look on the field against opponents? I cannot wait. We are so close, and it just feels right. So let's get into our topic of the night, the last topic of the offseason. And it's actually very fitting because this is the first year that Hard Knocks has done an off-season themed version of their show. So typically it's been training camp. And over the years, that has seemed to, fall off a little bit, and it hasn't been able to secure the viewership that it has in years past. A lot of that is because we're getting more and more access through social media and things like that. So when you're hearing things via training camp and stuff like that, you've already seen the clips, you've already heard the rumors. There's really nothing behind the scenes training camp wise and Hard Knocks that's really as hard hitting as it used to be. So they shook things up a little bit and did an off-season version. And I think a lot of fans like the concept because in the NFL, the draft and free agency and what goes on behind the scenes plays such an integral part of building your roster. And I think people are pretty fascinated these days with roster construction. How is this team built? Everybody likes to play internet GM. This type of show gives you a look into what it's like to actually be a GM. Over the years now, we've been getting a lot of draft day access into the war room as picks are made. Similar concept here for this Hard Knocks show. This is free agency off-season edition, what it looks like in the offices of the New York Giants during the offseason. So I just went into how nice that show is, what a good spin of Hard Knocks it was. It has gone so bad for the New York Giants. I think this could be a one and done show because I don't know what other football team is going to sign up for this and be okay with this amount of access and this amount of cameras within their front office. It has gone that bad for the Giants this time. And listen, I know it's hard to get teams as it is. That was another problem with the training camp edition. People didn't want that much access within their walls, within their training facilities and stuff like that. So Hard Knocks is pretty much forced on you. There's certain rules. If you didn't make the playoffs back-to-back years, if you didn't have a rookie head coach, you were automatically eligible. The NFL could force it on you. But back to the Giants and how the Eagles tie in. A lot of the viral clips that have been going around from this show, and it's really been drumming up the show, is how the Giants handled Saquon Barkley. And a lot of that is, over the course of the offseason, there has been this discourse that Saquon Barkley is some traitor who abandoned the New York Giants, left them out in the cold, and went to a division rival. This show is telling a different story, and it also telling a story of a New York Giants front office that has a lot of question marks and makes you appreciate the Eagles front office and what they were able to accomplish this offseason. So there are 3 different clips that we'll go over tonight, all kind of tied in together, and the sequence of Saquon leaving New York and becoming a Philadelphia Eagle. The first one, pretty much literally that sentence. The Eagles, before the Eagles even get into it, the Giants GM, Joe Shane, he calls Saquon himself. He had talked to his agent, and then he calls Saquon after and lets him know, hey, we're going to let you test the market. It only feels right to do that and go that route instead of franchise tagging you. We're going to let you test the market, and if at the end of the day, we want to have the final offer. We would like to be able to match whatever your final offer is. So let's stop right there because I thought it was a pretty awkward phone call. I don't think Saquon seemed that elated about the phone call. He didn't seem to like it. I do agree with the Giants. I think franchise tagging a running back, Cowboys, you don't franchise tag running backs. It's a pretty dumb position to franchise tag, but I digress. So that made sense. But he wants Saquon's word that Saquon is going to come back after he receives the final answer and give the Giants the final chance to match. Let's stop there. You don't always get that opportunity when you're allowing someone to be a free agent. A free agent. You did not want to commit a set amount of dollars to Saquon Barkley and then wanted him to come back after he received offers so that you can match that. So you wanted him, instead of naming his price, you wanted somebody else to do it. And once they did the heavy lifting and they did the legwork, you wanted to be able to see, it's worth it to us, it's not. That's a dangerous game to play, and it ended up backfiring on them. The Eagles have played a similar game in the past, even most recently with guys like Darius Slay, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. They said, you are allowed to test the market, see what's out there for your client, and see what you can do and see what you can secure for him. In both cases, the guys ended up with the Eagles. So Slay was not an Eagle for about 12 hours, and then they re-signed him. He wasn't able to find anything else on the open market. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was, but it wasn't the deal that he was looking for. He didn't get a long-term deal. He signed a short-term 1-year deal with the Lions, which, if you remember, the Eagles had given him a deal, but it wasn't the amount of guaranteed dollars and years that he was hoping for. So he settled on the 1-year deal in the end. Maybe a little bit more guaranteed money over that first year with the Lions, but right now back with the Eagles. And I think if both parties had a rewind button, we would have just done the deal that he got this offseason, last offseason. So it's not far-fetched to believe that a front office could allow a player to go out and see what their value is on the open market. Where the Giants messed up, though, is that's like, listen, it's like playing roulette. It's going to land red or black. And you can't be mad when it lands red and you had black. And the fact that they wanted him to bring back his final offer is where it seemed like Saquon kind of got disturbed, because he had told them from the beginning, New York is where I want to be. And they said, well, go be somewhere else and then let us know how it goes. So the frustrations among the front office and the fans just kind of, it almost bugs me to see how his name has gotten drawn through the mud when this is the strategy that the Giants proposed themselves. So the second clip, it's really the whole front office. It's the GM, it's the owner, John Mara. I think some coaches are in there as well, the assistant GMs. And Mara is very worried about the loss of Saquon, the potential loss at the time. So he says, it would kill me if we lost Saquon to Philadelphia. He says he's our most popular player. And I get it. It's hard to really escalate the price on running backs in this day and age. It's not a valuable position as it once was. Although cyclical wise, I think it's coming back around. And we're going to start to see running backs get paid again because of them being multi-positional pass catchers out of the backfield who now can run, catch, block, everything like that. They become more valuable in the offense. So regardless, I can see how they're getting worried. The problem with it is the GM again. He says tomorrow, I hear that the Bears are driving the price up and the Eagles are out. We know how this story ends. So the fact that you are getting intel from somewhere, one, that's wrong, is a red flag. Ironically, the Bears ended up with DeAndre Swift in the end. They signed DeAndre Swift before the Eagles signed Saquon Barkley. Swift got less dollars than Saquon Barkley. So the Eagles were out and the Bears were driving it up, but then the Bears got DeAndre Swift and Saquon Barkley ended up with the Eagles in the end. This whole time, Mara is asking the GM questions, and the GM's kind of just smiling, saying, I don't know. And it reminded me, growing up, I was horrible at math. So the teachers would sit me down one-on-one, explain the problems, and then question me, like, do you understand? And I'd be like, yes. And then be like, okay, then explain it back to me. And then I'd have to sit there and smile because I didn't know what else to do because I didn't know what I was doing. The GM of the Giants had the same look when the owner was pressing him on the availability of Saquon Barkley and where he was going and the possibility that they were going to lose him. He looked like a kid in math tutoring who did not know the solution to the problem and had no answers for it. That's what the Giants GM looked like. And it was red flag city in that clip. Now, to the third clip, and this is the final one. Saquon does sign with the Philadelphia Eagles. They're on the phone and they're getting the word that he is. His agent had told, it seems that they didn't tell him it was the Eagles. They just told him what the deal was. And you can see they start to find out through television, Twitter, whatever it may be. They had NFL Game Day on the background, but they hear from Saquon's agent and the agent tells him what it is. The Giants are not willing to match. This is key. They were not willing to match the guaranteed money. It was one of the offers that they had given him earlier in the offseason with a little bit more guaranteed money, but they didn't match whatever this deal was. It seemed like it was signed, sealed, delivered, secured at the time. And they didn't really ever come. They came back to the Giants and the agent told him the deal, but it was more like, this is what the Eagles are giving us. This is what we're going with. Thanks for everything. So again, that was red flag city to me and to everybody, really, because like you had a similar deal, but then you told him to walk and then he found something a little bit better. It's like, don't give your significant other a hall pass, because they might take that hall pass and that's it. And that's exactly what happened with the Giants and Saquon Barkley. So it was very interesting to see in depth how things go in the front office. A chase where multiple teams are in on the same player, and a player of that caliber in Saquon Barkley, who, how often do running backs like that come out on the open market? And I'm thinking about it, like Jonathan Taylor's locked up. Christian McCaffrey got traded, so he never really hit the open market. Derrick Henry was kind of past his prime by the time he signed with the Baltimore Ravens and spent much of his career with the Tennessee Titans. So we haven't really seen that I'm thinking about for quite some time, a running back of Saquon's ability hit the open market. And a lot of this, again, goes back to front office moves that happened before Saquon hit free agency and before these phone calls were even made. The Daniel Jones contract is killing the Giants. It's killing them. And they can get out of it after this year, but we can talk about phone calls, how the phone calls are handled. They did not have enough money for him because they signed Daniel Jones. They chose Jones over Saquon Barkley, and they chose wrong. And that allowed Saquon Barkley to hit the open market. And I'm not going to listen, 90% of it is bad. The plan to build up the offensive line as a pivot from Barkley is a really good idea. And they also were able to secure Brian Burns in the offseason, and they took a kind of a dart throw at that one, and they were able to pull it off. So they did do good things. But for the most part, like, they're watching tape and they're like, we can stay up till 4 a.m. This is a direct quote. They're saying we can stay up till 4 a.m. We can plan out all these scenarios, but you never really know. Like, it may never break your way. It didn't have to get to that point where you had to play out all these scenarios. So you could have just secured Saquon Barkley to begin with. He was on your team. You had the chance to franchise tag him. You had the chance to sign him to a long-term deal last year. You had a chance to let Daniel Jones walk, so you had a smaller cap hit for your quarterback situation, who, again, this guy may lose out the quarterback training camp battle to Drew Lock, who's making significantly less. All of these things could have happened before we ever hit this point that you're staying up till 4 a.m. watching Devin Singletary running back film. You know, you have no one to blame but yourself. So there was an interesting deep dive into how the Eagles ended up with Saquon Barkley. And I would just love to see the other side of it. Our front office, when Saquon becomes an Eagle, the conversations that they were having with him and with his agent and, James Franklin or whoever the hell else was involved with it. But I thought that would have been a really, really cool pivot if you had the inside access to how the Eagles pulled this off after the Giants fumbled it with him. So just real quick to wrap up here. I love that. I thought it was a good, off-season show, off-season topic, and kind of puts the bow on the off-season for us. Going forward, we'll be talking about physical on-field performance. I think I have very, very high expectations for Saquon Barkley this year in a way that his name has kind of been flash value. And when he is on the field, he is one of the most electrifying top 5 running backs without a doubt. The high ankle sprains concern me more than the knee does. At this point, age 27, you're kind of close as a running back, but I think he's been like a freak of nature. And Christian McCaffrey, is actually older than he is, and he's still just as productive. But I think the larger problem in Saquon's career has been the offensive infrastructure around him. And the Giants, again, were working to improve the offensive line in these clips that you saw from this Hard Knocks show. But it's something that should have been addressed for 4 or 5 years. And really, they just keep missing on guys to get to this point. So I would like to see Saquon as this dual threat pass catcher in a way that they didn't utilize DeAndre Swift like they said they were going to. If you remember, on day 1 of training camp, they had him lining up as a wideout. And I'm not saying Saquon has to, but I'm saying they were trying to utilize running backs as pass catchers, and they never really did last year. So do it with Saquon. And how he opens up this offense as a second-level guy. And what I mean by that is I love DeAndre Swift. I really, loved Boston Scott. I even loved Miles Sanders. A lot of these guys were one cut and didn't have the explosiveness that Saquon Barkley does, because no one's really ever had that explosiveness. And when teams are so worried about getting beat by Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, what does that do for Saquon Barkley, who now has more opportunity to hit that second level? And even if you were a fan of Saquon Barkley back at Penn State, he'd have a run for -2. He'd have a run for -1. And then he'd rip one off for 53 yards. So I think there are more and more opportunities for him here. His place in the batting order lines up well where there will be runners on base for him, if we want to use a baseball analogy. So to swing it from the offseason to the tangible, he is now an Eagle. He is now going to be on the field for us next week. He is going to have an Eagles helmet on. He, knock on wood, will be in Brazil starting running back week 1 against the Packers. How does that look? I'm very, very excited for it. And I'm very excited, anytime you can steal a guy of that caliber from a division rival, it feels really, really good. So that's it. I just wanted to talk about that because it's been all over the internet and it impacted the Eagles mightily. It's probably the story of the offseason here and how they were able to revamp this team after a collapse. But that's it. The offseason's over. And all things considered, I think it went pretty well, considering how that at the end of the season took place. A total collapse, retiree of 2 legends in Fletcher Cox and Jason Kelsey, and they were able to rebuild this team through free agency and through the draft in a way that I think will impress a lot of people, and secured the big money assets in A.J. Brown, in Landon Dickerson, even Reed Blankenship, Devontae Smith. All these guys got taken care of to start to build a more formidable team, a better offense, and better infrastructure within the coaching staff with Kellen Moore. So, and Vic Fangio. I cannot wait. Next week, again, we will be talking about actual real football down at the NovaCare Complex. We've got plenty to come. Guests next week, guests all year round, plenty of interviews, plenty of content. Make sure to subscribe to Birds vs. Boys. We're closing in on 1,000 at just the right time at the start of the season. That's a wrap on the 2024 offseason. Talk to you soon for real football.